I've had an evolving love with knitted lace over the last number of years. Watch my gallery of knits to date, and then at the end I will be giving you some details of my books, my library, and of the actual knitted pieces. think one of the most amazing things about lace is that the result of hugely intricate, fabulously beautiful textile is the result of perhaps as little as 5 different stitches. And people say to me, oh, I couldn't possibly do that. And yet, if you are a knitter and you know how to knit, how to purl, how to make one, how to knit 2 together, the lace knitting is open to you. And I hope this little YouTube video will encourage some of you to have a go. I'm sharing my adventure into knitting lace. I've been doing it for approximately 5 years, and I'm definitely still learning. So, having shown you the gallery, I would like to share the books that I have been using over the last number of years to help me to produce these different shawls. Now, I started, and there are videos earlier on from Fireside and Fairytale of the strips that I used for my counterpane that I actually knitted in cotton. I used this book here, Knitting Counterpanes by Mary Walker Phillips. And I had discovered and fallen in love with the idea of knitting a counterpane for myself through 2 books. One was a Welsh counterpane, and then Victoria magazine old back copies had photographs which gave examples. This is a whole world in itself, and you could come to this book and never leave, quite frankly. The products are wonderful. I have my double bed size bedspread counterpane on my bed, and I just love it. It looks fantastic. The most recent book that I have acquired in my lace knitting library came yesterday, but I thought I'd pop it in just now. I've literally just been having a quick look at it. It's by Hewitt and Daley, Motifs, Borders and Trims in Classic Knitted Cotton. And I've just popped it in here just now because so many of the patterns here are at least similar to Knitting Counterpanes book. They may be the same, I don't know. I haven't researched to that degree, but that is a lovely book to have. It's the Kangaroo Press, and these are ladies who are from Australia. Well, one was English and then moved out to Australia. Now, the book by Hewitt and Daley that I had originally, and that started me on lace edgings, was Classic Knitted Cotton Edgings, and I've used this many times over the last few years. I got the name of this book because Tasha Tudor mentions it in one of her little videos. And I absolutely love this book. It's beautifully laid out and very clear photographs of what you can produce. And the patterns are very good. They're very sound. One of the things I noticed early on and need to be understood is that so many different knitters and writers of patterns use different syllables for the same stitch. So for a yarn over, you might have an O, you might have a YO, you might have an M1. They're all the same thing. And it can be muddling and confusing to begin with. And normally what you should do is just go to the beginning of a book and look at their abbreviations and what symbols and abbreviations they've decided to use and follow them through. Now, another book that I've noted before, again, I absolutely love this book, and this book had been around for a while and was really just a bit too pricey. So I waited for the price to come down and haven't looked back. I wish I'd actually got it earlier. It's called Lace from the Attic. It's by Nancie Wiseman. I'll put all of the titles of the books in the show notes for you to refer to. This is a wonderful backstory to it, and the actual patterns are extremely useful. Again, very, very well laid out. In this book, she includes charts as well as the written directions. And so I will show you something that I've actually used from this book, the novelty lace, which is here. And I made the novelty lace here. I made 2 panels. That's one panel, and I joined it at the top. That's the other side panel in novelty lace. And the back, I used a doily pattern, and then I stitched the whole thing together, and it's a little old-fashioned nightcap in Shetland wool, I think, this one. And the doily at the back comes from this book here, Tessa Lorant, Knitted Lace Doilies. Again, I love, I've done another program on lace doilies last year for you. This particular pattern's called Merry-Go-Round. And you'll see if you refer back to my gallery of photographs, knitted on 4 needles, it's quite difficult to start a doily. You have to be very patient at the center, but just keep going, and then it emerges. Another extremely useful book that took me a little while to get into, and now I'm referring to it all the time. Helen James, Lace Knitting. I highly recommend this book. If you're just starting, the instructions are extremely clear. It's a very well laid out book, and you're not overwhelmed by the number of patterns in here. She does include charts and also directions and how to do repeats. And in this book here, I've used a number. I've used cat's paw. That's actually a cat's paw insertion. Cat's paw is a traditional, as far as I know, Shetland. Where are we? Shetland design. I'll look it up later. Anyway, this is cat's paw. This is the knitted article. This is a sleeve that there we are, cat's paw. Isn't that lovely? I'm knitting this in Rowan kidsilk, and I recommend that if you don't want to be using the Shetland 1-ply or the cobweb Supreme lace 2-ply, then there's Rowan silk lace and kidsilk, all very lovely, I think, for cozy scarves. Anyway, this is a sleeve. I've done the other sleeve. I just have to be doing the body for that. We'll come to that. Now let's see if we can get cat's paw in here. And no, it's eluding me. It doesn't want to be looked up. Here is fir cone. I sometimes call it pine cone. And I've used this to great advantage a number of times. It's again in lace knitting. Rowan kidsilk in a lovely delicate pink. I think it was called Heavenly. And I was learning on this. So it's a variegated fir cone, variegated pine cone. It wasn't exactly exact by any stretch of the imagination, but I have to say, my tip to you is just keep going. Don't try and go back and make it perfect when you're learning. Just keep going. After all, it is all holes, and they're so complicated anyway. And the more you do, the more accurate you become, till eventually you are doing it correctly. And then, of course, there are ways and methods and means of going back and undoing stitches. But to begin with, I just kept going with this. And I use this all the time. It's so cozy and warm. Now, another one I then found on the internet is St. Ninian's Shawl, and this is by A Passion for Lace, St. Ninian. She did this in 2013, and I saw it on Instagram, and I just loved it and decided to go with it. And there is a story behind this one, because it was just done at the time when we were all in a very difficult place in the early 2020s, and my identical twin sister passed away over several months. It took her to make her final journey from this planet to the next, and I was not allowed, I was not permitted to go and visit her in her nursing home. That was extremely difficult for her and for me. And in order to come to terms with the whole thing, I knitted the St. Ninian shawl. I just hung on to the needles. I find knitting is wonderful if you're going through a difficult time in your life, and it's fabulous. And I wore it to my sister's memorial and also my father's, because exactly the same thing happened. He was in the nursing home next door, and again, couldn't visit him to say final farewell. So this was made as a restitution, I would say, a coming to terms with difficult scenarios. Knitting is wonderful for that. Lace knitting focuses your mind. You do have to follow the instructions if you haven't learned them, which I never do. And as I say, I wore this to the burial of the ashes in the clan burial ground in Inverness-shire, and it was very much admired, and I highly recommend that you try it once you're a little bit more not just complete amateur, I would say. I just love it. It's my best sort of shawl. So then I think we have got to the place where I can show you this book. This is a recent book, a recent one for me. And again, it's got a lovely backstory to it. So the lacing knitting of Mary Schiffmann. And she has some lovely edgings and doilies in here. Haven't finally got around to using them, but again, the layout is excellent. You have charts as well as instructions. Inevitably, I moved to, I have to show you this one. Now, lace knitting doesn't have to be fine. This is blue-faced Leicester. I bought this on a trip very recently up to the lovely village, beautiful village of Aberfoyle. And there was a shed there. She was selling wool from the area, blue-faced Leicester, which they're English sheep. And I wanted a Christmas wrap for this Christmas, and it's keeping me really warm, it really is. I only had a certain amount, and so I was limited. I didn't want to run out of wool, and I wanted a quick knit because Christmas is coming. I have visitors and cooking and present wrapping and all the rest of it. So I chose from the Helen James book. I chose the, I think it's called Snowdrop, and I just made one strip, and it's rather nice knitting in strips because you don't feel that you're never going to get to the end of a row. Dayflower, that one there, and as I say, I just did the strip like that for the length that I wanted, and then I did another strip and I joined the two, and I did an edging, which is a Shetland, a traditional Shetland knitting edging, and it's just a lovely wrap, and as I say, I'm just wearing it all the time. It looks stunning, and it is not difficult once you can just knit the very basic stitches. So what's the next step? It's going to be the real deal Shetland, and the Shetland lace shawl that I'm calling A Window in Thrums, which is the title of the book by J.M.Barrie, who wrote Peter Pan, and it was called A Window in Thrums because it has a centre panel, which is like a window, and the two side panels are a fir cone, and you can see it on my clips, my previous clips, and you can't see the actual one because it was a birthday present, and it's been given to my elder daughter, and that's just lovely to be able to have family to knit for, and it's greatly appreciated. So with the Shetland, this book is a sort of a crossover. It has some Estonian in it, but quite a few of them are the traditional Shetland stitches in the Helen James. But in looking back, I would say the earliest one that was written, potentially, though, as I say, I'm just finding out about this, so don't take all I'm saying for verbatim, because I may come back and say, no, that isn't right, I'm still researching. However, The Art of Shetland Lace seems to me to be one of the earliest books that were produced, I think, in the 1980s by a lady called Sarah Donn, D-O-N, and this was published in 1981. And it's extremely good because she went to Shetland, and it's the real deal. It's the real deal. And so it's a wonderful resource if you can get it. Sarah Donn, as far as I can make out, her maiden name was Erskine, so presumably she's Scottish, married to Monty Donn, who's a gardener. And she seems to have been extremely enterprising in those days, when people really didn't know about Shetland knitting, and brought a book out. And for Christmas this year, I have been given this wonderful book, Shetland Fine Lace Knitting, which I highly recommend. It's by Carol Christiansen, who is the curator at the Community Museum and Community Museums Officer at Shetland Museum and Archives. She's been there since 2006. And this really is, you have to buy this. You really do. There is a Shetland shawl there. It goes into wonderful photographs, goes into the history, and the charts are, it's a very clearly laid out book, and it has the charts, and it also has the directions. There is another book by Sharon Miller. I'm not very happy with that one. It's very difficult, in my opinion, to follow, and there are no written instructions. It's just charts. So if you have the choice, I would be going with someone who is actually from Shetland and from the museum there, and I think it's just great. And of course I've started on my next one. This is a panel from one of the designs. She doesn't call them by name, she gives them numbers. and so I've done a sample of that, and popped it onto my blue card there. Just stitched it on the back, and I plan to build up my own samples of the various stitches. I'm using Jameson&Smith Supreme lace weight, and I'm using Knit Pro Zing. This is 3.25, so it's probably rather larger gauge than most people. It's quite loose. That is a traditional edging, and you knit the edging first and then work inwards, which is quite daunting. So we'll see how we go with that. And I've just had a lovely delivery man deliver some stops for my knitting needles. And just another little tip, not as young as I used to be, and so I write the instructions out large, so I can sit up and lean it against my knitting basket and be seeing it from a distance, especially when my cat Casper is on my lap. And I'm sure he will be here shortly for his tea. So I will let you go. I will love you and leave you, as they say, and enjoy the knitting. Bye-bye.